So, can you describe the personalities of your parents?
Well, let's see. My parents were very young when they got married, and then they waited for about 3 years before they had children, which was, of course, me first. And my dad was so I used to say to friends that we all grew up together. My dad was kind of a person that was real gregarious and outgoing and outspoken and was always making noise. If he could jingle coins in his pocket or make strange sounds or whistles, or he was just fun and just a noisy, busy kind of person. And he was a dreamer, and he loved making just just creating in our minds and thinking of just fun adventures that could happen, and talking about fixing up the house and buying an old barn and fixing it up and living in it. And he just was really creative, and but he also had he could go from very, very high to very, very low really quickly, and really struggled with his own emotions and feelings, and wanting to do more than he was able to do. And I know he seemed to get sick a lot, like in the beginning. It just seemed like he had a cold or a flu or something, and then finally years later we discovered that he actually had some real serious allergies to wheat and some of the trees that were in our backyard. And so and also we didn't know at the time, but he had been exposed to some serious chemicals while he was working at Hill Air Force Base that compromised his lungs, and inevitably that was why my dad passed away, was from suffocating from some tumors that had grown in his lungs because of the chemicals. And my mother, about her personality, she's kind of a hard one for me to just to nail down, because when I was growing up, when I was a child, I remembered her being very, very painfully shy and reticent, and very just very much did not want to be in the center of attention, or to even get any attention. And I remembered her practicing in a mirror for long periods of time before she had to give a talk in church, or before she would have to take part in some program in the Relief Society or something. She would be practicing in order to do her little parts. And I thought that was really interesting, because of course my dad didn't have that problem, and he would sing quite often. He had an incredibly very great voice, and but he would sing or perform in front of large audiences and big stake activities and ward things. He would be the MC or whatever. But my mom, on the other hand, really didn't like it. And so she also didn't feel real comfortable with a lot of physical, being demonstrative was not her thing, and she wanted people, to kind of keep their distance. But then as I grew older, the reason that it's difficult for me to nail down is that she doesn't seem that way now, and so maybe she's grown so many years with being with my dad maybe the two of them have kind of blended together and become two of the same person somehow. But anyway, she's more outgoing and definitely more outspoken about certain things, and she always enjoys a big hug. So that's who she is now. Oh, she's kind of a health nut, and she's always got the latest idea of how we can heal ourselves from every infirmity.
Describe a typical family dinner growing up.
Well, I'm laughing because I was remembering a funny dinner. My mother would pick up people on the highway and bring them home, or she would take people home from the Utah State Prison. She was a matron, and so if they were trustees, or if they had they were able to be out, then she would sometimes take these people into her home, and so one particular time we had Mr. Green, he was an old gentleman who had owned a barber shop many years before. Excuse me. And anyway, he was struggling. He had some different infirmities. He had a real huge ulcerated sore on his ankle that had become very inflamed and infected, and so he was excuse me, talking to my mom about his trouble with his leg, and so pretty soon she had invited him to stay at our house for a while, and so while she doctored his foot up and whatnot, and so one time we were all at dinner, and my dad was at the head of the table, and Mr. Green was at the other end, and all of us kids were sitting on the benches on either side of the table, and one of the kids asked if we could please pass the potatoes, and so somebody picked up a potato and hurled it across the table, so it whizzed past Mr. Green's face, and so he was a little bit shocked by our behavior, and we got in trouble, but we were still laughing. We didn't care too much. But a typical day would be that everything kind of revolved around my dad's schedule, and making sure that my dad had breakfast, lunch, and dinner served to him, and things had to be according to his schedule. And my mom took really good care to wait on him and make sure that he had everything that he needed.
And you all ate as a family?
Yes. And of course, if my mom wasn't there, which when we were throwing potatoes, we were out of control because my mom was at work. She worked most of the time during the evenings and graveyards. In fact, she worked 3 jobs at one time. She was the main breadwinner of our house.
How were birthdays and Christmases celebrated?
Well, birthdays were a big deal. And in fact, the minute that you woke up in the morning, my dad would be singing happy birthday, and this big, huge, booming, boisterous voice. And then and we would go downstairs and we would have a wonderful breakfast, and then sitting on the table would magically appear beautifully wrapped packages, and I don't know how my mom did it, but it seemed like I guess because she worked at night and for graveyards, so that when we would wake up in the morning, she would have brought out the packages or whatever from her car. She was always really good at surprising us. But then we would have a wonderful cake and usually whatever was our favorite type of meal, and that was how we celebrated.
What about Christmas?
Oh, Christmas. Christmas was awesome. My mom was so good at decorating Christmas trees that she actually won awards for her Christmas trees, and they were just amazing. And so the Christmas trees, where we could help somewhat, we couldn't actually do everything because the tree had to be just so. And then at Christmas time, when we would come to the front room where the Christmas tree was,
Christmas morning?
Christmas morning, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, and Christmas Eve, we would always open our pajama present. And then we would put our pajamas on and sing a hymn, and my dad would read out of the Bible the account of Mary and Joseph in Luke. We would read that together, and then so Christmas morning, everybody's part of the front room was decorated, so that some presents were wrapped and some weren't, but it was a beautiful display, and so it almost felt like you'd woken up in a toy store. It just was a beautiful place.
So, were you given a blessing as a baby?
Yes, I was. I was blessed by my dad, and I don't have the exact date of that, but I have my baptism date.
Okay. Let's see here. So you were 8 years old when you were baptized, right?
Right.
Okay. And so where were you baptized, and what's the date?
The date that I was baptized was August 30th, 1963. And I was baptized in the old bishop's house in the Salt Lake City Temple Square. And it was really just such a wonderful experience. And I just have so much of a great feeling about that whole experience. And my parents were really strict about following the rules and not bucking the system or doing anything to create waves or anything. So my dad happened to be working, and the time for me to be baptized was a Saturday, and it was done as a stake, and that's the way it needed to be done, and so we all needed to comply with those rules, and unfortunately my dad had to work, and so he, knowing that, asked me to choose the young man that I wanted to baptize me that would be a good priest, and so I was selective about looking for the most kind, thoughtful young man, and I chose a really sweet boy that I just thought was typified the kind of person that I wanted to grow up and marry, and so I chose him, and he was very tender and sweet and thoughtful of me, and I have good feelings about that day.
And who gave you the gift of the Holy Ghost?
My dad did.
On Sunday?
On the following Sunday.
Nice. And describe your first experience in the temple. Did you go as a youth, or? I don't remember doing baptisms for the dead as a youth. I don't know why I don't remember. I think
we probably did that as in the singles program, you know, just some fun outing kinds of things. But the first time I went to the temple, I was receiving my own endowments just before I went on my mission, and the date for that was September 7th, 1976, and that was just prior to my going on a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I served a mission in the Washington, Seattle mission.
When did you decide you're going to serve a mission?
Well, all of my childhood, I felt like I was aware that the boys got to do important things, or it seemed like they got to do the important things, and so I just thought to myself that that I could do things that boys could do, and so I tried to learn how to play ball and catch and stuff, and I was pretty good at football and baseball, and I enjoyed those things. And so in my mind I was thinking, well, I can do as well as any boy. And so then when all of my friends who were boys were going on missions, I didn't want to be left out. And then also at the same time that they were going on missions, my cousin Lucinda went on her mission to the Philippines, and I just really loved that, and I was really proud of her, and I thought that was awesome, and I wanted to do that. So she helped to inspire me. Amber.
Sorry, I had to use the restroom.
You're gonna have to cut out a big chunk.